good evening, and welcome to another episode of Shattercast, where we talk all things value with video. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to make your videos more engaging. Obviously, the more engaging we can make it, the better they're going to perform. But what does engaging actually mean? What are the tips and tricks and things that you want to think about and bear in mind as you look towards it? So I'll kick it off, and I'll say the first thing you really want to think about when it comes to it is not the tips and tricks really of creating videos and how to make them engaging, but it's knowing the purpose, knowing the content's purpose, because the tips and tricks that you use or the techniques that you use might change depending on where the video is going. So if it's going on somewhere like a TikTok where it's very, very short form and that's your intention from the off, then how you present, the sort of edits that you use, the sort of presentation skills that you use may differ quite a lot compared to if it was, say, a longer form thing that goes on onto YouTube, which could be 5 to 10 minutes long. You might be, if it's TikTok, you might be a lot more animated, you might be a lot more gestury, there might be a lot more movement, a lot more quicker edits just to really capture that short form attention in there. Where if it's YouTube and maybe it's a bit more educational, it might be more demonstration purposes. You might have to show certain things off. You might need extra things in there like B-roll cutaways or something to really amplify the message that you're trying to put across. So that would probably be my first thing to think about as you're going to create content is what is its purpose, and then start from that. And once we sort of get that, then we can really move into some tips and tricks. One key thing when it comes to content, which is probably one of the most impactful things that you can do, is the story. What is the story behind it? You can tell stories through all of your content if you angle it in the right way. So for this one, I'm gonna throw it over to Al because he is our resident marketing expert. He specializes and has an expertise in copy as well. So obviously, storytelling is definitely a forte that you're very, very good at. So what would your approach be when it comes to creating content? How do you take something that might seem mundane and somebody's day-to-day norm and go, how can I turn this into a story?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I think because I got thinking about this, we were doing an online training the other night and somebody was basically saying, how do I stop my videos being boring, or how do I avoid being boring? And it kind of took us down this pathway of what is a boring video? What's an engaging video? And as you said, like storytelling's a vital part of it, because I think what we tend to do on video, particularly if we're coaches, consultants, experts, or we have a product to supplement, is we go into pitch mode or presenting mode. And for most of us, the people that we model are presenters, teachers we've had, lecturers, and it's very much like a teaching format. It tends to be fairly monotone, fairly dull, death by PowerPoint, just presenting the facts. And that's a natural style that most of us go into when we first start presenting. But obviously, there's an old saying, which is facts tell, stories sell. And I don't just mean sell as in get money. I mean sell as in sell the reason, sell the emotion, sell the why behind it. So instead of demonstrating knowledge, if instead, or giving tips, if instead we tell a story that shows the tip, shows the value. And that can be very simple. Like we're not talking about, being some big storyteller around the campfire telling stories. And it can be very simple. If we break it down to very simple elements, you start off with a hook or a segue. So a hook is actually like, so let me just tell you about the one most important lesson I've learned in business that's helped me make like $1 million this year. That's a hook. Let me tell you about the day that almost ruined my life. That's a hook. Because suddenly you're like, oh, how did that happen? Why? What? Where?
So you're using the hook to build intrigue as well.
Yeah, just to kind of let people know I'm going to share something valuable. It could also be a simple segue like, oh, that reminds me, by the way. Oh, I had an experience like that. It doesn't always have to be like a big hook. It could just be like, it just preps the person that there's about to be a story. But obviously for most videos, we want like some type of curiosity hook. Then we go into the actual thing, the incident, the experience. And we want to paint a scene for people, like, where were you? What were you doing? A good phrase for this is like, if you were there with me. Okay, so a few years ago, I had to go in and give a presentation. And if you were there with me, I'm there, I'm about to go on stage. I can see the spotlight. I can hear the speaker announce my name. I start to get the butterflies in my stomach. I hear the applause and I take that first step out beyond the curtain. And, oh my goodness, you should have seen. So immediately I'm telling you what you're seeing. I'm putting you there. And so that's kind of like, oh, I worked with a client the other day. Oh my goodness, this client said to me, once again, we're in a story. So you tell the story, you tell the point of it. Oh, so the reason I'm telling you this. So anyway, at the end of the day, what I learned was you give them the point. And so if you have like a hook, the story, and then the point, and it could be very simple, like a story could be a couple of sentences. I mean, I'm sure Nath can talk later on, but like even in sales, like a short case study. Oh, yeah, I hear that all the time. In fact, I was speaking to somebody the other day and they told me you're into a story, you're overcoming objections with a story. So if you just think about those three things, hook, story, point, for any of your videos. So if you're like, this is the top 3 tips in order to, I don't know, get more leads from your website, close more sales calls, whatever the video is about. Just think about what's a story I can share that's going to give the viewer a light bulb moment, going to solve the problem, going to add insight, or even going to make a connection between me and them. That's what the story's for. What's the simple hook? What's the actual experience the picture I'm going to paint for people? And then what's ultimately the point? And people, that's going to be so much more memorable because people never remember facts, but they do remember stories and experiences. So if you want to make your videos more engaging and less boring, start collecting and telling stories. And yes, the first few times you do it, you're probably going to be like, you're going to feel like, oh, this feels a bit awkward. I'm not a natural storyteller, whatever that is. But if you do it a couple of times, like riding a bike, you're going to find that it actually gets easier and easier. And you're probably going to find that you get a better and better result.
So one thing you went into there, which I thought was really, really good in your example, how descriptive you were. So it's not just a case of going, this happened and this happened, this happened. It's not a boring story that you're trying to tell. You are using extra verbs and adjectives and all that sort of good stuff to try and put the reader or the viewer as much in your shoes as possible to see and feel and hear everything that you're experiencing. What's the power behind that rather than that sort of mundane storytelling?
Yeah, well, it's basically it brings it to life, which is what you kind of want. When you're telling a story, like we all know stories, like once upon a time there lived, and what happens is the part of our brain, when we go into storytelling mode, instead of being all critical and front-brained and like, hang on, is this true? Is this false? What am I being telling? We instead just go into experiencing mode. Okay, yes, there was a princess who lived in a castle. I'm not going to do the math on that. It did exist. As soon as somebody goes like, once upon a time, we go into storytelling mode. And we like being in storytelling mode. I mean, like video games, cinema, like TV shows, we love just kind of switching off and being taken on a journey, even if that's simple. Human beings have grown up telling storytelling. In fact, we're hardwired to tell stories. Most of our culture is based around stories. So as soon as you go into story mode, and story mode is when I'm telling you the experience of something. And obviously, if you're presenting, I can do it with my voice. I can do it with my gestures. If I'm saying, huge room, I go back, I put my thing up, my voice goes huge, small, like that's tiny. I can do my voice as well. Now, just between you and me, like I can do it like that. I can do so. The way to make it obviously boring and interesting is also in how you present it. But if you're telling a story and I'm inviting you to share the experience with me, I'm not telling you a story. I'm inviting you to have the same experience. And that's the slight shift is like, if I'm telling you something, like if I, even in sales, if I'm not pitching you a product, I'm telling you about the experience people have had and inviting you to share in that experience. And then instead of calling you to action and saying, buy my stuff, I'm saying, does that resonate with you? I mean, what would that be like if you had that experience? And so it's calling the person to have an experience and then inviting them to share in it or to have their own experience. So it's good you picked up on that because that is part of it, is not just telling the story, but inviting people to experience it alongside you.
Yeah. So you've touched on there as well some presentation skills and stuff we can do within that, which we'll probably come onto a bit more of that later. But I want to dig a little bit more into the actual structure of the story that you build. And Nath, I think this is probably something that from a sales background, you'd probably be able to speak to as well, is within that story. I mean, especially what you did in your example there, the first thing you're positioned there is actually the pain. and it's what they'd necessarily be feeling within that moment. And like I say, Nathan, I mean, I imagine you do this quite a lot in sales, is you speak to people's pains, you speak to people's problems. And if you can do that in your content, what is the power? What's the benefits of doing that? Because a lot of people might say, oh, you're starting with a negative, but what are you actually doing when you position it that way?
Well, you're positioning yourself as the expert. You know what their pains are. You understand their world. You're putting yourselves in their shoes. I mean, we did an episode a couple of weeks ago where we spoke about ideal client, ideal viewer. If you haven't seen that, go and watch that, because that's where it really starts. That's where the magic comes in. You mentioned it right at the very beginning there, all around knowing who your ideal client is and knowing what's the purpose behind the video content. And the purpose will always map to who is the audience that you're trying to attract, who's the audience that you want to engage and take on this journey that Alex has just gone down a storytelling mode, and bringing them along the journey. Because ultimately, if you're targeting the right people, then you're going to target the right people that are engaging in the content that you are creating ultimately. And going back to what you've just mentioned around the power of that, and yes, starting with a problem, and most people will start with a problem, and that's the hook. It's, have you experienced this issue before? Here are 5 top tips as to why accountants ... because you're targeting who? The accountant. What their experiences are, the 5 pitfalls of. Those are pain points, but you're putting yourself in their shoes and saying, look, we helped this person with these problems. These are the impacts of these problems that we know that you're more than likely going to be experiencing because we're talking to you, our ideal viewer. And if you can demonstrate what the impact is, you're showing your expertise, because you not only understand what the problem is, you understand what that's actually causing for them. And then you take it a step further and go, and we actually have the solution. And that's how you capture the attention, especially from a video point of view. I would also caveat as well, something that Alex said around the hook, the story, and the point, actually results and outcomes, and also by when, especially from a sales point of view. Because if you can say, we can get you XYZ result, we can get you double your turnover in 90 days, we can get you an A-class salesperson within 60 days. Because what you're then doing is going, this is the result that you're going to get by watching the content, but also, when are you actually going to be able to resolve the problem? We know that you've got the problem. This is the problem. This is the impact. But this is the result you're going to get by working with us, watching the content, that sort of thing.
That can be a really powerful thing, I think, positioning the result. And a live example of that, I think, which is really cool, is so for those who do watch YouTube and go on YouTube quite a bit, or at least know about who the big YouTubers are, Mr. Beast, obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest, still the biggest YouTubers around at the minute, doing the biggest and most wonderful stuff that he can do. But one of the main things that he actually does, like say, within his hook, is he shows you the result. He positions the result. Do you want to know how I took it from A to B? Do you want to see how I took this business from 0 to 100,000 to 1 million? Do you want to see how we took this room from looking like this to looking like this? They're positioned, so you've already got that comparison in your head. So the viewer's now not even there necessarily for the end result. They want to be on the journey because they want to know the rest of it. And if you can do that as a business too. The room one's a great example. If you're an interior designer or something like that, then you can go in and go, do you want to know how I took this room from looking dull, bland and boring to this vibrant, amazing, magical masterpiece of a room? Stay tuned, and and then take people on that journey, show them the hardship along the way, and you create your story. The hardships, what are you going in with? What are your drawbacks? What's going to be your challenges? Where have you got to think outside the box? And then how did you do the things to overcome those obstacles? How did you manage to jump the hurdles to lead to that end result? So I think that's a really, really powerful way of doing it. And I think something else you mentioned as well, which can be really good within your hooks, which you touched on, and Alex, maybe you can speak a bit more to this, is if you understand your audience and you know exactly who your ideal audience and your ideal viewer and your ideal clients are, actually call them out in the hook. because that's a good way, firstly, I think, to disqualify anybody who is not your ideal viewer, because straight away they go, oh, well, that's not me, scroll on. But also, it's a great way of getting the attention who it is, who might have usually scrolled on. I suppose, like I say, Alex, so you'll probably be able to speak to more to this than I can, but it's like if you're in a room full of people and somebody shouts your name, because it's your name, your ears perk up and suddenly you're like, what? Something kicks in there. And it's similar sense that if it's your industry, I know that if I'm scrolling and I see something say filmmaker, videographer, or anything in and around what I do, even if it's not something I'm necessarily interested in, I stop and I take a second to go, is it something I'm interested in? Because I've been called out and I want to know. So, Al, what's the power in actually being able to call out your audience?
Well, I mean, it's what you just said there. It's like there's partly it's in the hook, but there's also the in the experience of a story, because there's different things you can do in a story. One of them is you can bond with the person, because if you're talking about your experience, particularly if there's some element of vulnerability in there, like making a mistake, things not going right, struggling, it bonds us because we automatically bond with people who are like us, similar values, beliefs, identities, or whatever, and who are struggling or being open. And so if you're targeting similar things to other people in your industry and calling people out, but you're demonstrating your empathy and authority through a story, you're going to bond much more to the person. So the viewer is going to be bonding much more to you as an expert, as a figure, than the person who's just kind of regurgitating facts. So if I'm giving a story, and there's different kinds of stories. I mean, obviously, like one of them is your personal expert story, like what makes you an expert, and you talk about like the situation you were in, what caused you to learn to have the epiphany moment, what you've done with it, and how you can help others. Like that's basically an expert story structure. You also have the origin story. So this could be like how you got into something, or how you created a product, or how you created a service, or why you started your business. And you're obviously still trying to tie it into the viewer. Like, why am I telling you this? Why is this relevant to you? But we're always fascinated by what makes people tick, how things work, why things work. And if you can demonstrate that in a story, like, well, here's how I learned this. Here's why I'm telling you this. Here's what this business is about. Here's why this product is transformational. Let me tell you why. It all started, and then you're telling the story. So it's both calling out to people, because it's like, okay, this is for you. If you're an ambitious business owner, if you're a world-class speaker, if you're whatever the label is, if you're this, you got to watch this. And then I'm telling a story that you can bond and connect with. It positions me as a guide without me having to say, look at all my diplomas, look at my... No, you just go, oh, this person understands me, because I'm telling a story and connecting. And particularly if I can move you emotionally in any way, if you go, oh God, I've been there, or wow, that must be amazing. If I can touch that emotion, I've kind of got to the heart of it. We've now made a connection. You're going to grant me that know, like, and trust factor, and that's accelerated the relationship. And then if later on down the line I'm selling you something, well, now I'm not pitching cold to a stranger. We now have some type of relationship. So whatever I'm telling you, you're going to grant a lot more leeway than if I was just coming in cold and saying, hey, you should buy this stuff. So that's some of the bits about what you can do with story and the types of stories. And it speaks directly to what you were saying about calling out people and understanding your market on a deeper level, so you know what kinds of stories they need to hear.
It would also help from a financial point of view, wouldn't it, in terms of pay-per-click and ad spend, those sort of things. If you're calling out a wide net or throwing out a wide net and trying to catch all the fish, but actually you only want to catch the ones that are your target audience. So pay-per-click's a prime example. You're going to pay per person that clicks on it. You don't want people that aren't your target audience, your ideal viewer, to be clicking on the links, because you're ultimately going to be costing yourself more than had you have been specific right at the very beginning as to who you are talking to, who you're calling out in those key moments.
Let's give an exercise. This is an exercise I tend to do with clients, and anybody watching, you can do this now. If you think of two words that sum up your client base, one of them should be objective, one of them subjective. So the objective is like, I don't know, man, woman, business owner, speaker, coach, author. It's something that's undisputable. And then the subjective is some feeling quality, ambitious, world class, brave, bold, daring, rule breaker, innovator, whatever it is. So it's like, ambitious business owner, subjective, objective, um, you know, cost conscious housewife. I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to think of but if you try and think of what are the two words that together put a label that my audience will resonate with. And this could be the identity they have now, or the identity they want, or the identity that they're afraid of. So if you're a deadbeat dad who wants to become a role model father, I don't know, but that's what you don't want. Oh, that's what you do want. And you identify with one or either. Now, if you accept an identity label I give you, you're going to watch or consume that content through that identity label. So if I say, dear growth-focused entrepreneur, if you accept that and go, yes, I am a growth-focused entrepreneur, when I'm telling you the story or giving you stuff, you're going to look at it through that lens. And that's very powerful, because if I've got you to accept that identity, or if you do accept that identity, you're going to make decisions in a different headspace. So if I'm saying I don't know, what's the word, cost conscious or penny pinching, or you're a conservative minded serious business owner, well, suddenly you're going to be looking at the cost and the margin. Whereas if I'm growth focused, fast acting, dynamic entrepreneur, you're going to focus in a slightly different way. So if I give you a label and you accept it, and this is also the thing in story, in story, if I take on a role and I give you a role, if in the story I take on the role of I'm the teacher, you're the student, well, I don't even need to tell you that. If I'm just talking to you as if that's the case, you're unconsciously going to be accepting it. So this is how sometimes experts, if I take on the identity of I am the guru or I am the expert and you are the student, or sometimes as coaches will do you're the amazing one, you have so much creative potential, and I'm the guide. But whatever role I give to myself and to you in the story, you're going to accept. So this is how you can start to unconsciously almost influence people, because if they accept the role and the identity, that's going to be the relationship. So there's all these different aspects that can come in. But I think definitely if any business owner is watching this, try and get that identity label. It's going to make your marketing so much easier if you can go, that's the identity that we're speaking to.
And I think that leads nicely into the next point as well, which is authenticity. So how do you manage to connect with them on that emotional level, get that emotional buy-in? How do you get them to trust you, to take them, to guide them, to join you on that story? And I fully believe, and I've said this for years, I preach about this all the time, it's all about authenticity online. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The worst possible thing somebody can say to you when they meet you is, oh, you're not like you are online, because then you're not congruent across them. If I act this way on here, I'm going to act this way on my videos. I'm going to act this way if I meet you in person. I want to make sure that I'm consistent. The same way you'd make sure your brand is consistent. You wouldn't show up on socials and then have your copy and your letterheads be something completely different logo, different color or whatever. You'd keep it consistent across the board. And you should show up the same way when it comes to content. Make sure you are coming from a place of authenticity and value and really wanting to genuinely just help people. That's how you're going to build that trust with people. And that's how they're going to allow you to take them on that story and take them on that journey. And I imagine, again, Nath, I'll come back to you on this one. If that's done and it's done right and it's done properly, once they reach that conversion part of their journey, I imagine it's not even really a sales conversation at this point.
Yeah, no, I would say that a lot of the work is done because you have created that authority figure. You are the expert, or positioned in a light that they look at you as the expert or somebody that can help them on the journey that you've already taken them on. There's a huge difference between cold outreach and the ability to go hunting for new business, as opposed to somebody that is more of an inbound operator, BDM, that is basically looking to convert the leads that are coming in that already have identified that they have the problem. And what you're doing through the video side of things is you're educating them on acknowledging that they have a problem already and taking them on that journey that Alex has quite eloquently just gone through. And at the point that they then come through to the inbound salesperson, a lot of the work's been done all they have to do is acknowledge, understand, and demonstrate that they understand the current gap between where they are currently and where they need to get to, because your solution should already have the solution for them, and they already know that at that point. So the sales conversion actually becomes a lot easier. Not so much transactional, but definitely easier. You still have to have and articulate that you understand their pains and the problems and the impact that that's having, and how they can solve that problem. But when you actually engage in that, there may be other things or other nuances that you want to be able to identify and get to get that sale over the line, and be able to help them. But yeah, a lot of the work would have already been done through the video content, that the information that you're actually given. I think the key really with video content that you're creating, and any kind of content that you're putting out there, really should always be of value. It needs to be of value. It needs to be something that's tangible, perhaps something that they can go away and do as an exercise, something that they can do as a team. But ultimately, it's got to be having an action.
That comes down to, the power of video is essentially that, is to build trust with people and allow them to warm to you, so that they are more likely to take that next step, whatever that next step is.
It's to share an experience. So even like what Nathan, you were just saying there, it's like a lot of people, business owners who want to like book strategy calls or get people on the phone, they talk about it, but they don't think about the warm up or the prep. And that's a perfect time to put a video there. So if it's like, if you have a Calendly link to book into your calendar, and then you're sending them a confirmation email, you can include a, hey, before we chat, just watch this quick video. It's going to tell you, it's going to help you get prepared. In that, you think, what do I want people to know and experience before they get on the call? And then tell a story that puts it in that headspace. So if you're talking about what are the concerns, the dreams, aspirations, fears, and worries somebody might have before they book a call, and what state do I want them showing up in? Great. Tell a story that paces that. Here's a story about someone who had these fears, worries, and concerns. Here's a case study of somebody who worked with me. Here's what they found after the journey. And here's what I want you to think about. If you tell it as a quick story or show a montage of stuff, that's going to give somebody the experience of like, it's going to feel like, oh, I've already been on the journey, and it puts me into decision mode. And so then when you're speaking to them, as long as, first of all, you can see if they watch the video, that's a red flag. You can cut a lot of calls that aren't going to go anywhere off right away. Hey, what did you think of the video? What was your favorite thing? I didn't watch it. Okay, well, let's rebook the call. So do they watch it? If they watch it, it gives them the experience, and it makes sure they turn up in the right frame of mind, often with a lot of objections already overcome. Even on, if you use Zoom, like, I don't know exactly how you do it, but like sometimes, when the Zoom waiting comes up, like you're waiting in the room, you can show a video at the bottom of the waiting screen. So let's say you have a trailer of like case studies, so the most amazing coach, most amazing experience. If somebody's waiting to get on a call with you and they're watching a success reel, how does that frame it when they come to the call? So there's all these opportunities for showing videos and influencing people, and most people are oblivious. They don't use it. But I just want to share with you all the different opportunities for sharing stories. And what you said about authenticity, Joe, one of the things I used to do that made me feel a lot more comfortable when I used to go live or do cameras, once I've done the hook, the first thing I do is I bring somebody into my world. Hey, so just in my office today, just got my third can of Monster. I'm probably going to get a haircut later. I probably should have got a haircut before the call, but hey, what can you do? Anyway, guys, so I'm bringing you into my world right now, where I am, what I'm feeling. If I can go, oh, I'm a bit nervous about this, actually. I haven't prepared the slides as well as I should do. Oh, well, wish me luck. If there's any spelling mistakes, don't bother telling me. So if I'm nervous, if I'm worried, I'm sharing it right up front. I'm not hiding behind a barrier. I'm not presenting myself. I'm telling you, this is where I am. This is who I am. This is what I'm feeling. So right away, I'm welcoming you in, and I'm grounding myself in the surroundings. I'm grounding everyone in the surroundings. And then when I start talking, it's much more equal and one-to-one, and like we know each other, than if I'm like trying to, the first times I presented on video, I had the suit and tie, I had the gestures, I had the voice tone. I was trying to be somebody else. And as soon as I swapped that and stopped and went, I'm going to ground people in my world and myself before I start talking. And also, if I make a mistake, I'm either going to keep going or I'm going to highlight it. I'm not going to stop, start, edit point. I'm just going to go, blah, 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 okay, hang on, rewind. Let's do that again. Okay, what I meant to say was, because then that's showcasing who I am. So, and that makes the video more engaging because then it's a human.
It's showing your vulnerabilities, and it makes it a lot more personable. And I think that's it's a great mindset to go into, and a great technique to go into doing that and bringing people into your world to actually tackle the confidence issue that people have a lot when they first come to getting on camera. Realistically, no one likes getting on camera for the first time. So to be able to have little things like that, I think is great. And like we said, doing stuff where the power of video is essentially it's your 24/7 sales rep. It's selling without selling because it's positioning you as an expert. It's showcasing your experience. And realistically, you haven't even met them yet. You haven't spoke to them at this point. It's doing it all for you all the time. And what it's essentially doing there is it's taking a prospect or a cold lead and it's warming them up. It turns them into a warm lead by the time they actually do reach a point where they reach out to you or connect with you and you actually talk to them for the first time. They're already kind of pre-sold on you. And one of the best things I've heard of video, I think, recently is if you're doing video properly, it shouldn't cost you time. It should give you time. And that's the whole point of doing it. Is it's not a case of going, oh, I've got to do video and it's going to take up so much of our time. It's the time the video puts in for you massively outweighs it. This is a great example what we're doing here. We're not doing this for a financial return or a quick financial return. This is for us to position ourselves, for us to get out there, for us to get some visibility, to offer value and make sure that people see our experience and what we can bring to the table. And this will work ongoing now for months, maybe years down the line, as it's on the YouTube channel. And it's an evergreen piece of content. And that is so underrated and incredibly powerful. So I'm aware that we're going over time again, as we do seem to every week. But what I want to do is I want to end on some actual, so we've spoken a lot about structure and storytelling, authenticity, and things you can bring to it. I want to quickly run through a couple physical tips and stuff that you can actually do within video that will help increase the engagement if you wanted to do it from that perspective. So being the video one, I'll name a couple, and if any springs to your minds, then by all means, both of you feel free to jump in. I think the quick and easy one is B-roll. B-roll, you can shoot B-roll yourself. You can grab stock stuff online. What is B-roll? B-roll is essentially supplementation footage. So footage that supplements what you're speaking about. So if I'm selling cars, then I want to go and get some images of the cars, some footage of the cars that really show it off. Detail shots, shiny badges, shiny stuff like that. Anything that really helps you sell it. Any kind of cuts. You want to try and keep the cuts flowing. We all know talking head is boring. So if it's one static shot of a talking head for a long time, it's pretty boring. So even with podcasts, this again, another example, us sitting here having a chat where it's generally we could go, oh, well, it's an easy edit because it's a talking head. No, we're cutting it up and in a way, once we've done the edit and put it onto YouTube, that it's a bit more engaging. We cut from camera to camera to camera, and it triggers something in our brain to re-engage what we're actually watching and what we're paying attention to. You can use graphics, you can use images. The use of audio is massively underrated and still underused a lot. Getting sound effects to really amplify a transition or a bit of text that comes up, or anything that you're doing or anything that you're saying. Again, if you're talking about cars, maybe you have a car rev or horn or something, just something that again makes the brain go, that wasn't there. That re-engages them on what you're saying. That's a couple different ways from a creations perspective that you can do it.
It also goes into, Joe, we talk about before, putting people into your environment, because I'm just thinking there's a coach whose stuff I like watching, and he kind of edits his own videos, so it's not the professional editing, but he makes use of his environment. So, for example, he lives in a house by the sea, so he'll often have B-roll footage he shot himself of just like, here's me on my balcony having my coffee, here's the sea. He's got a couple of unusual pets, like he's got a pet seagull, so he'll feature that in the video, like here's me feeding my pet seagull, or oh, it's my seagull again. And what happens is, like, those are just rough B cuts that he's just roughly inserted into the video, but it places you in the world and it shows you him and his world. So let's say I've never met the bloke, but if I met him for a coffee or at a training, I'd be like, how's your pet seagull? I'd instantly have like an in, or like, oh mate, the view from your balcony is amazing. So it's like, never met the bloke and don't know him, but because he's doing those small B-roll footage of like, here's my world, here's the things around me, I feel like, oh, I'm part of that. So what you're just saying there about B-roll, sound effects, all that little thing, it doesn't need to be amazing uber professional. What it needs to be is authentic and interesting. If it's interesting, if it's funny, if it's unusual, it just gets your attention, and it makes you, that guy can talk about stuff that other coaches talk about, but I have more of a relationship with him because I know his world than the person who's like, presenting themselves in the $1,000 suit with the Maserati. That's a different style.
It allows you to know someone before you know someone. And from their perspective, so from the business owner, the creator's perspective, that is such a powerful thing to be able to have. And again, we're running over, so I'll name a couple of things real quick. And maybe again, Alex, because you kind of teed this up at the beginning, you can throw in a couple too. But presentation techniques, I always say, like, don't go into presenter mode. Don't try and become a presenter because of that authenticity. What you've got to do is try and again, this only really comes from practice. There's no silver bullet to it. But try and understand what your personality is. Try and understand what your little quirks are, what your tics are, what you do. Lean into them if you can, because it makes it more unique. It makes it more you. Take your personality, just turn it up to 11. The thing is, you've got to get your personality and your energy and everything that you're about through a screen to somebody else's eyes, to somebody else's brain, to somebody else's heart. So you've got to push that through. So unfortunately, it can't just be normal you. You've got to amp it up a little bit. You might have to go a bit more theatrical with your movements and your gesturing again to bring that engagement into it. Is there anything else from a presentation point of view, Al, that you would think about?
I think we'll do a whole episode, probably the next one, about presenting. But just to take up what you said, like that energy thing, I learned it as the 5% rule. And it works in any kind of business or presentation. If you have just 5% more energy than the people around you, you lead the group, because everyone goes to who's got the highest energy, and it's just that small 5%. So if I'm like presenting and I'm like, I just need to bring 5% more energy, 5% more enthusiasm. It's not huge. It's not like drama panto mode, although sometimes that can be useful. It's more just like, okay, raise my energy. And if I'm talking about something, I want to tap into my enthusiasm about it first. So even before I go live, I'll be thinking, why is this cool? Why is this amazing? How is this transformational? I'll feel excited. And then when I'm presenting 5% more energy, I can tap into that. And that's going to slightly project it to the people watching. But as I say, we'll probably do an entire episode about presenting because it's a really cool area.
I was going to say, with how much we started to go into there, it's probably not a bad idea. Otherwise, we'll be going on for another half an hour.
Yeah.
So I think with that, we'll sort of call the episode to an end. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go over to @TheShatterGuy on YouTube, and you'll be able to see all our past episodes, all our future episodes, and the other content that will be going live very soon, which is going to be all around how you can help your business through the power of video. But as it stands for now, I'm Shattered, and I'll see you guys next week.